So as we conceived of ways that we can connect to Israel and to our Israeli brothers and sisters, we have been able to bring the voices of dear ones from Israel. If you've traveled, I'm trying to look here, I don't know that anybody on this Zoom has traveled to Israel with us. You would know that every time we go, Temple Bethel prays at Kehilat Harel, the first Reform congregation in Israel, and in many ways very much similar to our community here in Rhode Island. It's really been a joy to get to know Rabbi Ada over these years, and Cantor Evan and I go way back to the first year of rabbinic school. But as you can see, he changed course, became a cantor, made Aliyah, and serves with Rabbi Ada in the land of Israel, and also is connected, went to GW with Rachel Mirsky-Woda. So the connections abound, and I will say to the two of you that watching your Facebook feeds over the last several months has both brought me to tears and been an inspiration, watching how you lead your community and how you put one foot in front of the other each and every day. And we're just so grateful that you are here to share your experience and your wisdom with us. So I'm going to highlight you.
Sarah just muted herself, so you guys can go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to mute myself. See, this is what happens when I multitask. I was trying to pin the two of you. So.
Right now it's just me.
Oh. Rachel, you're better at this than I am. Oh.
Okay, guys, you're all set.
Oh, we're all set? Okay. Great, Rabbi Ada?
Yeah, so good evening from Jerusalem. I know it's lunchtime at your place. So hello to everybody. And well, you know, Rabbi Sarah is our friend, and also Cantor Rachel. So it's a great pleasure and honor to be here with you. We can share few experience of what is going on in Jerusalem since October 7, or since the last years, even before October 7, but I would say let's focus on October 7 and on. And we will share with you a few photos and even sirtonim.
Video recording.
Video records, short ones. I understand that you want to know what's going on in Jerusalem vis-a-vis the war that is going on. Am I true? Is it right? You want us to share with you about that? Okay, so maybe we will start with the Shabbat, Simchat Torah, you know, that it's all started. And you know that we didn't have a clue that we would have such a catastrophe. And we just got up to a very festive Shabbat, because Shabbat of Simchat Torah, the end of this month of festivals and highlights, you know, Yom Kippur and all the joy of Sukkot, now to the highlight of dancing in the morning of Simchat Torah. And I usually get up very early, at 6 a.m. maximum, to get ready for the synagogue. And I open always to see what's going on in Israel, even in routine times. And then I see rockets, you know, in my smartphone, the news, breaking news, rockets on the south of Israel, rockets, lots of rockets, and the red sign, something that is unusual with the mass of the rockets. And I was in contact with Cantor Evan, and he's like me, he's getting up early, and actually was in his way to our synagogue in Jerusalem, because we are doing that. Evan is opening the synagogue, and I close the synagogue. So he was in his way, and he said to me, well, Ada, it's in the south, so we can do as usual our service.
Or in Tel Aviv. Yeah, in Tel
Or in
Aviv
Tel
too.
Aviv.
Yeah.
Because it was not, the feeling was that it's unusual. It's not the routine rockets from time to time on the south. It's something more than that. And then Evan was already in Arel, and then a siren in Jerusalem. And this is really, really unusual. Many of us in Jerusalem, we don't have proper mamad. Mamad is the very special room that is like a shelter at homes. Only the modern houses do have it. We do have kind of shelters that we have to go, all the residents in the building, down by the stairs to a shelter. So I went quickly. It was really something that doesn't happen, in Jerusalem, unless it's very, very, something very rare that it happens. And after 10 minutes, because we have to stay in the shelter for 10 minutes, we went back to our apartment. Evan was already in the shelter of Arel. We have a shelter in Arel with one congregant that came early. And then it was clear that we have quickly to text to our congregation by WhatsApp, the congregational WhatsApp, under the circumstances, no service today. It was clear that we have to cancel that. And that was the black day in Israel. I don't have to repeat what happened, but many of us call it like Shoah, like a day of Holocaust, the worst disaster that happened to the Jewish people since the time of the Shoah. And we were all day via the television watching the news and going down to the shelter, because it happened several times in Jerusalem. So then this is it. We can divide, our life before and after.
Well, Ada, you got muted again. Somehow you're muted.
That I didn't touch it, but I say that was a day that will be never, never forgotten. And it will be in all the books of history, this October 7 here in Israel, in the south, and actually all over. And since then, we say metaphorically, we are still in Simchat Torah. Even that Purim is coming, we are still in Simchat Torah. Our hearts are broken, and we worry with the families of the hostages, what will happen with them, no release yet. We have tears because of the young soldiers that died, so many. There are so many people in the north of Israel, in the south of Israel, that are evacuated from their homes. They cannot live in their homes, thousands of people. And we don't know what will happen now in the north. And in all that, we try to live our routine, day life, to support, first of all, our dear ones, our families, and of course, our congregation. So this is one of the challenge, how to keep routine in all this so not routine period in Israel. So I would say that that's for the start of everything. Evan, would you like to continue?
Oh, just to share my own. So exactly. So that morning of October 7th, one of the reasons why it's considered very rare in Jerusalem to have any rocket attacks is because of the large Arab population, the Palestinian population that are there. And so one of the feelings was, oh, well, they'll never fire it at Jerusalem because they might accidentally hit the Al-Aqsa Mosque, or it might it might land in East Jerusalem and kill many the Palestinian Arab residents there. Never happened. So that was our feeling when we had the first initial discussion. We said, well, we'll try what happens. And Ada said, Rabbi Ada said, well, just make sure you open the shelter just in case. So when I had opened the shelter, and it had been like 5 minutes after I opened the shelter, we heard the first sirens. And then we made a very quick decision, said, listen, after I said, let's see what happens in another 5 minutes. Another 5 minutes, there was another siren, and I was back in the shelter again. And we said, forget it. I said, let's cancel services. Nobody's going to want to come. Everybody's going to want to be watching the news as soon as we saw what was happening in the rest of the country and things were starting to unfold. One of the things that happened so actually it took me quite a while to even get home, because we were hoping for some sort of lull in the rocket barrage. There was enough in Jerusalem. It was at least four or five times at least in the span of in a couple hours. So part of the challenge was even putting a sign up outside, because not everybody's using their phone on Shabbat or on the holidays. And so, of course, you had to even just simply something as simple as putting a sign out saying services are canceled. That took me about an hour, because every time that I went outside to go put up the sign, the siren started. So then I was running back in again. Run back in again, wait my 10 minutes, go outside, and then the siren would happen again. So I ended up being at the congregation. I didn't leave there until after 11 in the morning. Until things had somewhat calmed down in Jerusalem. I said, okay, well, we'll take a chance to get home and be with the family. Nowadays in Jerusalem, one of the things that Rabbi Ada was mentioning was about the large number of evacuees. Evacuees have been sent all over the country. Again, Jerusalem being considered far from the you need a long-range missile to be able to fire Jerusalem. And so afterwards, unlike places like Tel Aviv or in the south or up north, where there was constant missile barrage for days and weeks on end, many of the evacuees were sent to faraway places like Eilat, to the Dead Sea, and also to Jerusalem. Jerusalem just being being Jerusalem, we have lots and lots of hotel rooms. And so all the major hotels and the big ones and the small ones as well as open themselves up. And there are thousands of evacuees from all across the country were here. You even have one of the things that gives you the feeling of that things were definitely out of the ordinary, to say the very least, was that all the tourists disappeared. But the city didn't feel any more empty when walking around, because we had these thousands of evacuees that were coming from around the country. So you still had the same amount of street traffic, but all of a sudden you didn't hear English or other from American Jews, for example, coming to visit. You also saw many signs all of a sudden, the local Jerusalem businesses realizing that these are people who have lost everything. After it came to light that this is not something that's going to be, done in a week or a month or longer, and that people are going to be staying here in Jerusalem for several months, people have to go shopping. You need to get things, not just your basic necessities, but you have kids, and kids grow. They grow out of clothes. What are you going to do? Or other things that you need. So the local businesses, many of them put up signs saying that if you were evacuated from your homes, we will give you a special discount. And they told people to actually bring your ID card with you to make sure that nobody takes advantage of it, of course. And as long as you can show that you are from the Gaza envelope communities, or that you were from up north in the northern Galil or up in the northern Golan, and you came to Jerusalem, I said, we're going to make sure we're going to help take care of you. We're all going to band together. There were also many the protest groups that Rabbi Ada and I were involved with. One of the amazing things that we saw was the gear shift that happened very, very quickly within the span, I think it was within a week, if not less, that groups that we were involved with said, listen, we've got this huge WhatsApp mailing list. Everybody in Israel uses WhatsApp for communication, and everybody is on several WhatsApp groups, for better or for worse. And of course, they had these massive mailing lists where they could reach out to thousands and thousands of people who before were volunteering or wanted to be involved with protests against the governmental, in a sense, the legal coup in the changing how the legal system works in Israel. And they said, listen, we're going to all get together and work to help all the evacuees that are here across the country, but in particularly in Jerusalem. So within the span of a week, they said, well, if the wheels turn one way, we'll just turn them the other way and use all the advantage that we have of being so organized. And there was a war room that was set up in Jerusalem specifically to help, a civilian war room, that's what we call it, to assist the refugees that were living in Israel, Israeli refugees. Being a refugee in your own country, that all move here, and people need clothes. People, if they're not working, what kind of income are you going to have? And so to make sure to help meet their basic needs, that the government itself in the very beginning and the shock did not function at all when it came to taking care of its citizens. So civil society stepped in. And then afterwards also to help out, throughout the country, to mobilize volunteers. We have, Ada, do you want me to share about like Yaakov, for example, or different members who
Yes, why not?
and
Sure.
volunteering? So for example, when setting it up, one of our members, who's the vice chairman of our congregation, he's a tour guide. So obviously with all the tourists gone, he's got nothing to do. And he's got a huge heart. And he said, listen, I've got a tourist van and I know the country. I don't need Waze. I know the country, backwards and forwards. Put me to work. And so we stopped seeing him on Friday evenings, even though he's the chair of a ritual committee. He only comes on Saturday mornings because Fridays he spends all day from the early hours of the morning to the late hours of the afternoon, crisscrossing across the country, bringing supplies. Things where even that the army doesn't have the manpower, the Israeli government doesn't have the manpower, civil society is stepping in. So he's driving, for example, reserve soldiers. If I don't have a car, but I have to get to a certain base, he'll take you there. If it's bringing different supplies and they pack it in the van, okay, you can call on Yaakov. We've had other members who came out of retirement who needed for helping all the evacuees. For example, one Nomi was an English teacher, and she just recently retired, was very happy to be retired. Okay, I gotta, need to help my country, so I'll come back and start teaching again in the hotels where the evacuees were staying. Or one of our board members who was a preschool teacher, and she was very happy to be retired. And of course, when the call came in, she said, of course, I'm going to help out, and started volunteering running a preschool in one of the local hotels. So everybody really had civil society really stepped up and banded together to help each other out.
We also had another sad experience with one of our congregants, a board member, that her nephew was killed in Gaza. 20-something soldier, that's all. And of course, we went to support her and her sister, and that was very, very that is very, very difficult. But it happens unfortunately in lots of houses now in Israel. Almost every day we hear about one more soldier that was killed in Gaza during the fights. Evan, let's show our people the video from this Friday night that we did have siren just in the beginning of the service. We have considerably quiet time in Jerusalem. We have terror attacks, in Jerusalem, but no sirens in the last 2-3 months, something like that. But one day, we begin every service by saying to the congregants, in case of a siren, there is a shelter that you can go with quickly but safely to the shelter. And at that Friday night, it was something like 1 month ago, 2 months ago, Evan,
No, it
something
was
like
made
3
in
months
December.
ago.
It's
December.
hard. You lose track of time when you're in the middle of a war.
Yeah.
You lose. It's all a blur. This was back in December, actually, where Rabbi Mack and I were together in Washington D.C.
Yeah, in the
that Friday
convention.
night. So I wasn't there, and instead it was two HUC first year HUC students who were filling in for me, and they were on the Bima together with Rabbi Ada. Of course, we
Yeah.
live stream all their services, so I was able to watch it from Washington, D.C., which I'm going to share with you all, just to explain the way those of you who have been, some of you have been to our synagogue, those of you who haven't, being an old building, Rabbi Ada was alluding to the fact of what's called a mamad. A mamad, it's an acronym in Hebrew for a protected space. In Israel, buildings that were built after the Gulf War, when there was the rocket attacks from Saddam Hussein in Iraq. And after that, as a response, Israel building codes mandated protective spaces in every building built since 1990, I think it was 92, 93, something like that. Harel being a building that was built in the late 1800s, in the 1890s, of course, didn't have a protective space like that. So we have an old cellar downstairs, which we had checked many years ago, and it definitely can function as a shelter, but the steps are like this. It's very steep. So older members of the congregation, the biggest fear, of course, is when going to the shelter is not tripping over your own feet. And more people have been hurt because of the Iron Dome. More people have been hurt by falling over, tripping over their own 2 feet, some of them quite seriously, than actually from rocket attacks themselves. So when we show you the video and Rabbi Ada starts directing people to go to the side room, it's a space it's an inner room, but it only has one window rather than the sanctuary, which has got a whole line of windows. So being next to a line of windows is the most dangerous, because you could have, if the rocket falls outside, it could blow out the windows and you could be hurt by the glass. So just to explain why some people are going one direction and some people are going the other, it's not chaos. It's really that if you can make it down the steep stairs, go down the steep stairs. If you can't, then the side room is better than staying in the sanctuary.
So usually, just before you show it, usually we know among ourselves, Evan and I, that Evan will run with the young congregants to the shelter, and I will go with those who don't want to run to the room. Yeah. And then, because you were not there, I went with one of the students downstairs to show him the shelter. And I said to him, in case that something will happen, the people will run after you, and I will go with the other to their room. And I'm so happy that I did that before, because, it was after a long time that no siren, it was quiet in Jerusalem, and then boof. So you will see that.
Right. One more thing just to share also is that Israelis know how long you have to go to the shelter. Jerusalem being relatively far away from Gaza, you have a minute and a half. And people have on their phones will have have apps on their phones, and it'll tell them from the home from command that you can follow you around, letting you know wherever you are, how much time you have to go into a protective space. In addition to also having the siren go off on your phone. So when the siren went off here, I said everybody had to be in the shelter. You've got a minute and a half. Okay, so let me just share the video, and I'm actually going to share the first minute and a half after it started. And also the other thing just to add is that normally when we start and Rabbi Ada tells everybody, okay, this is what you need to do. And there actually happen to be quite a few more than regular number of people, because they're 2 HUC students. So their classmates came en masse, and some of the staff from HUC as well, to support the students. So we had many more than usual. And so Ada didn't even have a chance to tell everybody what to do, because usually we do it after the opening nigun. That's normally when we do the opening nigun. Rabbi Ada has her welcome to everybody, and if we see that there's there's guests, then she explains everybody what's the emergency procedures are. It happened right in the middle of the opening nigun. You didn't even have Rabbi Ada didn't even have a chance to share the what to do in an emergency, but it was a good thing, definitely, that there's nothing like preparing for an emergency and practicing like we did. So let me share on screen. Hold on just a second. Share screen, share sound, and play. Make it a little louder. Okay, I'll just double check once they start playing. You hear him playing the guitar? Just somebody give me a nod. Okay, thanks. So I shouldn't even have a chance to tell everybody what to do in case of an emergency. You can hear the air raid siren going up and down in the background.
Come with me here to the shelter with Will. Those who don't want, go with me here. Jacqueline.
Ada, I don't think you've ever seen the video.
I did.
Okay, Jacqueline. בואו, לאיפה שטלי עומדת, זה המקום.
I want you to listen for a second. I want you to listen to what you hear in the background in just a moment. Still going to make it in time.
Be careful, please. And then to the right.
And then. Hold on a second. Okay, so you heard right at the end, right just when the sirens got out, you heard the. That's from the Iron Dome. When the Iron Dome, you can hear it, and our microphone picked up from the ceiling mic picked it up, because when you have an explosion in the air, it's much louder than if it hits the ground. So in the building, it'll shake. I mean, you'll feel it, like when the air vibrate when you hear it, and that's when I'm going, whoa. Because when you hear it up and close, it's loud, those booms. And so we have to wait 10 minutes until it's safe to come back, because if you have after the interception of a missile, of course, it doesn't evaporate. It has to go someplace. So you've got chunks of missile and chunks of the interceptor missile that now will come down. So you have to make sure that they give that whole 10 minutes to make sure that nobody's outside when the pieces of shrapnel come down.
The point is that what I'm happy about, if I may say, if I may use the word, that after 10 minutes, everybody returned to their seats from the shelter, from everywhere, and we started anew the whole service, and we did it without any shorts. To make it short, no, we did the whole service as planned, everything, and it was on the contrary like a treat to do that, we are not surrendering the mood and the fear, we pray and we have power to do that and strength to do that. And what was very nice, Evan, I never told you since now, that after the service, I opened my cell phone, of course, and then I saw from Evan from the States, Yishar Koach Ada. So I understood that you saw that already from your far place next to Sarah, by Sarah. So that was it. But imagine people in Israel, not like us in Jerusalem, once in that are living constantly under these sirens that are frightening, and the fear for your life and the need to run. You know, children in Sderot, in the south of the country, and all the anxiety to live in a constant anxiety for years. But of course, this time, this war, it's really, really difficult. We are having a very challenging time in Israel.
Right. Many of the
that-
evacuees that are living, oh, I'm sorry, I was just saying
Yeah.
those going back is that the government is now, trying to encourage people to go back, and they reopened school in Sderot, but only about 50 to 60% of the kids came back. And many of them in Sderot, in a huge number, many of the residents were evacuated to Jerusalem, that are living here. And they said, we're not ready to go back. We're not emotionally ready. We're still, we want to know that that you're going to guarantee our security. And so some people have returned to their homes, but many are still, we're not there yet emotionally to go back.
Before we will open that to your question, let us share with you more things about what we are doing nowadays as clergy of Harel. So we are both very active. We were active before October 7 in all the demonstrations for democracy. But it's not also with our movement. The Reform movement in Israel was officially very active against this attempt to destroy the democracy in Israel. And we personally and with our congregation, we were very active in that. But after the war, when the war broke, now we dedicate the time that we have when we are not in Harel, in the synagogue, and we are doing supporting the families of the hostages. They are making poor people lots of things like demonstrations, and they are walking from the south to Jerusalem, 4 days of walking. They are doing things in the heart of Jerusalem near the Knesset. Everywhere they are shouting, release our families, release the hostages. So you see what we are, this is many people in Israel are going with that. And it says, my heart is hostages in Gaza, right?
My heart has been taken captive
in Gaza.
In Gaza.
So I never go from home without that. It's to show the awareness, to show the empathy to that. And we were privileged to be invited to do Kabbalat Shabbat at 2 p.m. In the tent that the families built in Jerusalem. There is a huge tent and huge activity in Tel Aviv, but also here in Jerusalem. So Evan, can we show a short video?
Yeah, I'm going to show you. Pick it up from my Facebook page. Hold on just a second.
And that was something like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Right.
So
this is right.
You can see us.
So you can show here. So this is the people that are gathered on the street. What's the background? Okay, that's back here is the Prime Minister's residence. It's behind the tree. It's hidden behind the trees back here. So this is where the encampment is, the protest tent, where they actually have camped out, and that's where a number of the families of hostages are sleeping, and they're sleeping on the street for the past. They've been there now for over a month in protest. So the government urging them to do everything possible to free the hostages. So this is Rabbi Ada leading in the beginning. Oh, yours truly. we did one of the things that we did during the service when we have our eyes closed was doing seconds of silence, one for each of the hostages. And so with 134 hostages still being held in the Gaza Strip by Hamas, so we took a moment for 134 seconds of complete silence. And of course, this is a very busy thoroughfare, and to get all those people to be, it's very emotional to see all of them just go suddenly silent, and you can honestly hear a pin drop. We also had part of the ceremony when we did the Kabbalat Shabbat with the families was also we had representatives from the families themselves who spoke.
This is
And
a grandfather and a father of a young man that was released from Gaza. So they are very happy that their son and the grandson was released, but they are still acting to release the rest of the people there.
Right. Nobody's saying, oh, good, my family, my family's free, then I'm done. It's like, nobody there's no one's free until we're all free. And so the families of those who have released after their are no less active, if not more, for working to bring the rest of all the rest of the hostages home.
Yeah. So we think it's the most important thing to do. We can, we can kill Sinwar, in 1 month, 2 months, but the hostages don't have time. They don't have time. So free them now, free them yesterday. That's the most important thing. And unfortunately, not all the Israelis and not all the leaders think like that. But we are here to say this is the most important thing and to support the families. And Evan, can you show the photos that I went with the sign of, and we'll explain what's going on there. אנחנו איתכן משפחות יקרות. This is a sign that I go, the yellow one is of course a symbol, an international symbol that we are waiting for the hostages or to the soldiers to come back. You know that, right? So you see many people with the yellow. And this is a sign that I wrote and I go a lot with it. אנחנו איתכן משפחות יקרות, לא חזרנו לשגרה, meaning we are with you, dear families. We didn't return to routine. Because what they are fear from is that the rest of the Israel will live their day life and they are alone with the sorrow and anxiety and worry for the dear ones who are still in Gaza. So the message here is you are not alone. We are with you. So this is a thing that I devoted to. Cantor Evan with me, but he does something in Tuesday mornings that I don't do. Cantor, what are you doing in Tuesday mornings?
Okay, so Tuesday morning, as I'm just scrolling over to show some of the pictures, I'll share in a moment. When I mentioned about civil society, the protest movement shifting gears. And so one of the things that they've done is volunteering on Israeli farms. The Israeli agriculture is highly dependent, if not completely dependent on foreign workers to working out in the fields. And after a number of them themselves were taken hostage, many of them were killed. They fled the country. And Israeli farms were simply not able to keep up with the work and be able to function without having enough people power to be out in the fields. So very quickly, within the first few weeks, people started volunteering. They're organizing volunteering at Israeli farms around the country. You have to be at least 16 years old. So they start from high school students in 11th grade. So many Israeli schools from around the country send their kids for volunteering for a day. So my older daughter went one day on a school trip and they went picking cucumbers. I volunteer specifically with a group of one of the main Jerusalem protest groups called the Bayit HaMishutaf, which means the shared home. And they reach out to different farmers through another organization. They contact one of the other organizations and they say, hey, listen, we have a need at this farm. So one of the and so they go every Tuesday and every Friday morning. I go on Tuesdays because it happens to be my day off in the middle of the week. Of course, rabbis and cantors do not have Fridays off. So but Tuesday works out when they said, hey, it's Tuesdays. It's great. So I've been volunteering with them since January. So I just share a few pictures here. The first went picking oranges, for example. Now, of course, being one of the younger volunteers, guess who got to go climbing up in the tree? But so we've gone, for example, we've gone picking oranges. I mean, to give you an idea, I mean, about how much the help that we had. I mean, I wrote here, we filled these containers, we filled 24 of them in the span of a morning. So to give you an idea, 24 of those is about 9 metric tons. That's a heck of a lot of oranges. When we were there, the every place that we've gone, the farmers are so grateful for us. I mean, they've mentioned that, listen, we can sell 3 times as much because, of course, it's, Israel's a small country. So things go from, it gets picked up in the morning, it's picked in the morning, it's delivered in the late afternoon, and then it's in the stores, a day or two later. They said, listen, we were able to sell 3 times as much produce every time you guys come. So one of the things we went for in oranges, I'm just going to skip through here. Worked in also in a packing house because it was very, very muddy, and of course picking scallions. Working through here, and so things from cleaning them and preparing them so that they can be brought to market. We've had one of our members. We've encouraged our members also to volunteer. So we had one of our members join us as well. So we've had there. I've learned last week I was putting together. I was taking vines working in a vineyard. So taking vines and learning how they grow and how they actually have to be tied onto it's kind of like a netting, steel netting to make sure that they grow in the right direction. So we sat there in the sun for 5 hours, and with these little like rubber things that you take to tie the vines to the netting, we sat there and we went up and down all from the vineyard, one after the other. Usually we're like groups of about 20 to 30 people. The first and another week we're there at a different moshav and putting together irrigation pipes. Okay, and so just taking a drill, and they teach you and you learn about it, how these things work. But it's very therapeutic. And a lot of the volunteers are because you're getting your hands, into the soil and being like the pioneers of, the original groups from that made Aliyah and build our country. It's a chance to relive that in a sense, and then give an opportunity for everybody to help. And the farmers are so incredibly grateful every time that we come.
Maybe now time for question if you like.
Absolutely. I'm going to unpin you so you can see everybody. Hang on.
Yeah, actually, we do see everybody. We're on.
Oh, you're not. You can't see Pin. Well, this way we can see you all and see who's. So if anyone has any questions they want to ask Rabbi Ada or Cantor Evan, now would be a great time. Just unmute yourself.
Well, maybe I'll start out, and I'm curious to hear what is giving the two of you hope, and how, as you lead your congregation, you find hope, given all that you have laid before us today. It's quite challenging, and I will say, you're very calm as you talk about evacuating and sirens, and I think I'm impressed by that, and because this is not something that as Americans we are used to, and I'm wondering what is keeping you going. I mean, this is a marathon, and the sadness continues, and the political turmoil is incredible. So it's a big question, but.
Right. But before I'm going to answer, of course, and Kendra, even if you like, but maybe you can show also the picture that on last Motzei Shabbat, we were both in the square of Paris. We call it Kikar Paris, in the heart of Jerusalem, with the families of the hostages. And you
Mhm.
can show, it's a sad, gathering, because we hear, you see, also we never smile. It's you see also what I wear, and Cantor Evan wears in the yellow, this sign, and I have here something like a heart that is broken, the yellow one as well. And this is, maybe Rabbi Sarah Terra Santa in Jerusalem, not far from our congregation. Do you have also the picture of all the people? Oh, yeah, this is it. You see? For example, Iskar Shav, there is a sign here. Iskar Shav, meaning do the deal now. Don't wait to release the hostages. So what gives us hope, Rabbi Sarah? First of all, we do say, Am Yisrael Chai, right? Am Yisrael Chai. So if we go back to our history, we always had to deal with horrible challenges, the destruction of the first temple and the second temple, and all the pogroms, and then the Holocaust, and we survived, and we established the state of Israel, and we are here. We live in Jerusalem. So, in a way, maybe we are tough as well, in a way, because in a way, we are used to that. You have not a second, not a calm day in Israel before this October 7, before this horrible government. I live here in Israel for 64 years, my age. We never have a calm day. Always something happening. Very intense. Everything is very intense. Living in Israel is very intense. So we are used to that. A. B, as I said, looking on our history, we see that we always overcome. So that gives us the hope that this is our history. This is our vocation in life. The whole world hates the Jewish people, right? We know that, unfortunately. And the anti-Semitism now is growing and bursting out again. So in a way, it like Megillat Esther v'na'afochu, right? As opposed to that, we will show you that we are not surrendering, that we are keeping our head up, and that we will survive. We will survive. Like we said, Am Yisrael Chai. And the third thing is that necessity. We have not the privilege to surrender and to be despair and to go to bed and to cover ourselves with blankets, and that's it. Both of us, we have families. Both of us, we have the responsibility to our congregation. People depend on us. That gives us power as well, And there is hope that eventually we have better times. It must be. And there are many, many good people in Israel, devoted, that love Israel, and are willing to do so much for the benefit, for the good of Israel. So we share our lot with these people, and we hope that together we will make Israel a better place to be, a better state. But we have first to overcome our enemies. We have enemies in the south, in the north, in the Taiman, and
Yemen.
Iran, this vicious circle of enemies that really want Israel not to exist. It's horrible to know that our tiny land, the land of Israel, like New York, what's the size of Israel?
It's like New Jersey, right?
Oh my goodness, it's not.
Or Rhode Island, for that matter.
It's nothing. It's really nothing. Give us peace in our tiny, tiny land. Okay? No, we want you out of here. So we will stay here. I hope I answered your
That's
question.
beautiful. Thank you. It's, thank you. No.
Yeah, those assemblies also getting together, not only if it's, volunteering, there are things that you do on an individual level and things that are on a group level. And what gives us hope is the, it's you can there's the individual volunteering, like going out, for example, like for me, it's working with my hands, in the farms. And for everybody has their own way they can contribute. But these gatherings together, be it on Saturday evenings, that have been happening regularly, in support of the hostages. You see, you're surrounded by other people that have, a similar vision for Israel as well, and you realize that you're not alone. When you're coming to synagogue and you come and we pray together, and when we conclude this program with our prayer for the freedom of the hostages, the fact that we're doing it together is a source of strength. So even if it's 20 people in the synagogue, or if it's 20,000 people in a city square, that togetherness is also really a big source of strength to know that you're not alone.
I have a question. I'm curious, two parts. What sources would you recommend we follow for accurate information about what's going on? Because it's no longer in the 24/7 news cycle as it was at the beginning of the war. And we're getting a lot of misinformation. And also, how can we be supportive from Rhode Island and from the United States?
Evan, would you like to answer?
Okay, so well, as first starting for the news, I mean, now granted, when you read the news, there's always some sort of political bias that is there. So I can only say what's good, what more or less agrees with my own perspective. I find the website Times of Israel to be very much centrist and fair. And I know from their reporting of different things that happened, for example, for before the war, when it came to, let's say, reporting what's going on in the reform movement, for example. Oh, thank you, Rachel, for sharing it. So, and there's no paywall, so it's free, so it's accessible to everybody. And so they're I think they really, really cover everything well. They also, their source of Israeli news is that I watch the news on the evening on Channel 12, and then I'll see a translation of the same stories that they had in Times of Israel the next morning. So you are getting a lot of what Hebrew speakers are seeing in the news as well, not just meant for native English speakers. So I would definitely recommend looking that way for as a source of news. What was this? I'm sorry, Rachel, you said the second question.
How can we help? How can we help?
How can you help? Well, I mean, I think I speak also for Rabbi Ada here. When we're in Israel, we see groups that come from the States that really, really touches our hearts. These solidarity missions who said, wow, you're here. In the beginning, obviously, when the war was raging in that first months, where there was not, the only option of getting to Israel was El Al, and all the airlines left, and getting those, waves, emails and phone calls and WhatsApps and Facebook messages from everybody. It was very, very important in the beginning. Now seeing people come and say, you know what, I want to help. I want to be there. I want to come volunteer for a week. Or I'm going to come on a synagogue mission, or I'm going to come with Federation, or I'm going to volunteer with another organization. When we see them, they come to synagogue on Friday evening or Shabbat morning, and we can see it in our members that are truly, truly touched by that, by being there in 3 dimensions, not only 2. And it's also something where there's nothing like being there to understand how Israelis feel and react and understand the situation. Even if it's something as simple as understanding distances, how long it takes from A to B, you can understand while Israelis, where their security concerns come from. When you're like, wow, I didn't realize everything is that close. So, coming here, and I'm saying this again for, personally, it really does, it means a lot and it helps. And I see also when we go not only at the synagogue, but also have gone to different rallies for the hostage families. And when they see that there are also groups of their siblings from the Jewish world, from all over, from the US, Canada, from Europe, South Africa, Australia, when they come, that really, it helps. It really does help. Rabbi Ada, do you want to add any?
No, I agree.
Does anyone have any other questions before we close with a prayer for the hostages? Go ahead, Bobby. Bobby,
you're
you're
on mute.
muted.
I said I have a personal question that has been a problem for me because I've been to Israel 5 times. We've taken our children and our grandchildren there. So they've all seen it. But people continually say to me, look at the Palestinian families, the children, the women, and what they're doing. And I just am like speechless as to say what the answer is. I don't know what to say. I mean, I feel terrible. You feel terrible for people, innocent people getting killed and getting moved to places where they're told to go, and then there's no food, and then they bomb it. And I'm not that I'm split, I'm just like speechless as to how to answer a question like that. If you have one, an answer or a suggestion.
Ada, do you
Well,
want to,
actually, Cantor Evan and I, we spoke about our meeting today. We prepared for that. And we ask ourselves, what if somebody will ask us what you asked just now? And we decided that Cantor Evan will answer. So
listen, war is hell. I mean, it honestly is. There is no such thing as a clean war. And if we, so at the one time, on the one hand, we don't want to lose our humanity and realize when other people are suffering. At the same time, sometimes difficult choices need to be made where, for example, that they say, okay, that Israel, it's because of the bombing and about all the, the thousands of residents of Gaza who have been killed because of the bombing from the air. Okay, so what's your answer? Your answer is that Israel should have not bombed at all and instead only sent in ground troops. We're not going to use tanks. We're only going to send in the Israeli commandos are going to go in and be able to assassinate all the terrorists. When you start probing and say, okay, so how are we supposed to fight a war? Wars are awful and innocent people get killed. Such is the reality, and it's awful. And we should be sad. We should be hurt when innocent people are killed. Otherwise, we lose our humanity. But at the same time, difficult choices have to be made. And if we have to choose if we're going to fight a just war to defend our country, and if it means that, okay, somebody has to die, if I have to choose between sacrificing thousands of Israeli soldiers to be able to fight Hamas, rather than we know that we're going to have to use the Air Force at certain times, those are awful decisions that have to be made. But I think I know where, if I had to make that decision, I know where I would go. There are other things where, for example, when they talk about for all despite the humanitarian tragedy that is there in Gaza, and it's downright awful there. And yes, people are starving, and the living conditions are terrible. At the same time, when the pressure is set about what Israel needs to do, why is it what Israel needs to do? The solution is very simple. This is my anger that's there, and I have a lot of anger. The anger is at Hamas. You could be that cruel to your own people? How could you? There is a solution. The solution is lay down your arms and be and stop being a terrorist organization. Say, you know what? We realize we were wrong. We hurt our own people, and instead that we're going to follow the path of Mahatma Gandhi and that we're going to, or Martin Luther King. That's the answer, not violence. The war would end like this. The responsibility is there. And the anger is that how can you treat your own people and how can you cause thousands of people's, the blood is on their hands. And it does hurt. And I feel awful for the, all the innocent people that are in Gaza. I will add another thing though, and it's something that's not spoken about, is that the Palestinian people really need to do a reckoning about what is the best way to achieve your goal as a Palestinian state. And this is from conversations that I've heard from people who've talked who live on the Gaza envelope, the community, the kibbutzim that are there, that are around, that surround Gaza. Most of them, generally kibbutzim, are left-wing, if not very left-wing leaning. And there were many, many peace activists that lived in those surrounding kibbutzim. There's a very interesting article in Times of Israel. You probably, if you go there today, it came out yesterday, so I think it's even still there on the site, speaking about how people are reevaluating their whole position vis-a-vis the Palestinians who are there, knowing that Palestinians, that residents of Gaza that they personally helped out, and who also worked on the kibbutzim there, those are the ones who mapped it out and were actually spies for Hamas, and shared where the weak points were for the kibbutzim. And so it's heart-wrenching to know when you put all those effort into coexistence and it gets, that's the response. So people, especially on the Israeli left, are really, really torn about how to respond. Also, when you have, surveys that have been done for public opinion of Palestinians, particularly in Gaza, where now the last one was done, nothing was done recently because you can't reach anybody because of the war. But in the months after, the early months after the October 7th, a majority of the Palestinians were for it. They thought it was okay, and this was the right thing to do. So it's very different. It shouldn't be an every issue. Okay, well then therefore you deserve it, because those are two different things. Whether then you lose your humanity. But the expectation that Israel is going to be able to fight a war where there are no civilian casualties, it doesn't exist. Why? These are expectations that it seems that are rooted into an issue of it's an anti-Semitism about, okay, that we have a certain expectation. The Jews, being too powerful is problematic for a lot of the people in the world. And to sum it up, I hope and pray that they will realize, or all of the current soldiers that are for Hamas that are there, that the terrorists will realize, listen, enough is enough, and we need to give up, because we're destroying our own people, and we're destroying any chance of a Palestinian state. But really, the blood is on their hands. But it still hurts to see the destruction that's there, without a doubt.
Okay, just one more question. Thank you for that. There's a lot of animosity towards where we are for Netanyahu. I was just wondering how you people felt about that he's...
Oh, this one's a good one for Rabbi Ada. Right? You're the number one cheering section for Netanyahu. I'm saying it sarcastically.
Oh, okay.
Very sarcastically. But your opinion about Netanyahu?
Well, Netanyahu is the worst leader that the people of Israel ever had. He is the one that destroyed Israel from the foundation. And until he goes, we will not be able to heal, to fix, to overcome what happened. He is refusing to say, yes, I am responsible. He is responsible, but he's refusing to admit that. He's the worst. I have no enough words to say how awful it is that he's still the prime minister. It's actually Netanyahu against the state of Israel. And that was before October 7, and this is much more obvious after. But for me, I knew it from the beginning. And as a rabbi, I see Pharaoh, you know, Pharaoh. So Pharaoh with the 10 plagues, he is the one that with his stubbornness and going against, you know, the God of Israel, brought disaster to his own people, the Egyptians, because who suffered from all the 10 plagues? The Egyptians, his people. So I would say that Netanyahu is like Pharaoh, and I pray to God that we will cease to have this horrible person the leader of our country, because it's destruction of the state of Israel. So I do the utmost I can to to be in the protest against Netanyahu and for the state of Israel, to save Israel, actually. That's what I can, but just to add one brief things to what Cantor Evans said before, if Netanyahu is Pharaoh, so, you know, the Hamas is really the Nazim. So we are fighting the Nazim. And would you like to have mercy on the Germans in the Shoah times? You know, because we bombed, not we, but also the states, right? Bombed Dresden, bombs Berlin, right? To fight the evil. So would you mercy those Germans? Some of them were not Nazi or were against the Nazi even, but they suffered because of Hitler, because of the Nazi. I see lots of similarity between that and our times, because the Hamas, some say that they are even worse than the Nazi. And some say that most of the people in Gaza support them. Now they suffer, but before that they support them, most of them. I have mercy for the children, but I don't have mercy for the Nazi. No, my heart is with my people. And
You're
I
finding
know,
more and more. Yeah, I'm sorry.
no, and I know that every country in the world, the States, England, France, you name it, if something a bit like that would happen to them, they would destroy the country, the enemies, and the whole world, and the United Nations, you know, would say, of course, you are right, but not when it comes to the Jews and not when it comes to the state of Israel. We should be killed and be silent. This is what the anti-Semitic word think about us. Okay, they killed you, they raped the women, they raped the men as well, they destroyed your houses, they burned them. Be quiet. No, we will not be quiet. And you are the word. You are bloody anti-Semitic, anti-Shemim. That's what you are. We saw that in the Holocaust times, and we saw it today. So we have to stick to each other, the Jewish people. You in the States, we in Israel. We have ourselves. We have to love ourselves and not to be auto-anti-Shemim. You know, no.
Self-hating,
The
right.
word wants us to do. No. We should be moral, but firm. We have the right to exist as France and England, Belgium, you name it, has the right to exist. We have the right to exist.
Part of the problem is there, just to add,
We should have the self-confidence. We have the right to live.
Yeah.
Because if we will not defend ourselves, if we will not fight in Gaza, in the north, in Lebanon, in Iran, they will destroy us like that, without a slight of mercy, nothing. The Jews, less Jews in the world. Hitler was right. Think about that. And if people say things like that to you, you know what to answer. We have the right to live. We have the right to exist. We have the right to fight for our life. You began all that. You, the Palestinians, the Arabs, the Gaza people, all this, you are Nazim. Tell them you are Nazim. Okay?
I'm mindful of the time, and while I'd love to keep this going, I know I want to just acknowledge how wonderful it was to share this space with you and learn from you what it's like. And we are so grateful not only that we as Bethel have this personal relationship with you and your congregation. We're grateful for your boots on the ground, volunteering, protesting, and representing Reform Jews in Israel, which is its own fight, even before the war. And we're just so grateful. And I know you wanted to close with a prayer for the hostages because they are always in our hearts.
Thank you very much.
So maybe I'll share the English, and then perhaps Rabbi Ada, you'll read the Hebrew.
Okay.
Okay, and then we'll close with a song. So hold on a second. This is the Hebrew. You have the Hebrew for you, right? For yourself. This is so everybody can see the words. Okay, great.
But you can show it, with the
Yeah, I'm going to follow along, but you can read the Hebrew, but people can follow along. We're going to start with May the 1, but right, Rabbi Ada will read the Hebrew for it.
אוקיי. מי שברך אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, ואמותינו שרה, רבקה, רחל ולאה, הוא יברך את כל החטופים והחטופות, ואת כל הנתונים בשביה ובצרה. יהי רצון מלפניך שיקוים בהם הכתוב, קול ברמה נשמע, נהי בכי תמרורים, רחל מבכה על בניה, מענה להנחם על בניה כי איננו, ויש תקווה לאחריתך נאום אדוני, ושבו בנים לגבולם. אחינו ואחיותינו, כל בית ישראל, הנתונים בצרה ובשביה, העומדים בין בים ובין ביבשה, המקום ירחם עליהם, ויוציאם מצרה לרווחה, מאפלה לאורה, משעבוד לגאולה, השתה בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן.
And let us say Amen.
Amen.
And then we conclude with singing. People, of course, are familiar with Eli, Eli, Shelo Yigamer Leolam. So we sing here. You can see it also in the transliteration here, based on the same song, but adapted for the situation. Sorry, just 1 second. There we go. Share. Eli, Eli, Yashuvu banim ligvulam, kol yeladenu, kol imotenu, kol tinokotenu, Yashuvu kulam, kol mi shenilkach, kol mi shenechtaf, Yashuvu abaita, Yashuvu achshav. Let them return home, let them return now.
Thank you, Cantor Evan, Rabbi Ada. We are so grateful for your time, and we look
Thank
forward
you.
to
Take care.
being with you together again.
Thank you. Amen.
Thank you.
May
Thank
God
you
willing,
very
in better times.
In better time.
Besorot
you. Thank you.
tovot.
Thank you,
Amen,
Cantor Rachel.
amen.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.